This conference will now be recorded.
I'm going to go back to the agenda now.
Real quick, after we were looking at that timeline, I want to make sure I'm not missing something here. The task force is going to be developing the direct aid plan, correct? We're
That
not
is correct.
Okay, we're not necessarily asking the cities or anybody else to submit anything to us. We more or less need to just be consulting with those people, correct?
Yes, and what they've been submitting will be a part of our direct aid plan.
Okay, all right.
And I think that'll come into some focus as we go today, Anthony, but if there's still holes, please let us know toward the end.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was on the same page as everybody else.
Yeah, and so our understanding at this point is that we have a reimbursement plan and a direct aid plan that we need to, in a general way, it doesn't, this was nice, I found. Now the reimbursement plan, that's not true. It has to be pretty specific, and SJH and L are going to require receipts for that. But the direct aid plan can be pretty general, and then it can be reconciled as time goes. And so I'll say more about that. But I think what I've seen in all the information that's coming back to us is that all the reimbursements that people would request, and the priority for those would be schools, cities, and county, like we've talked about. They would have to meet these conditions. They would have to be COVID approved, so to speak. They would have to be not budgeted for that particular entity as of January 1, 2020. So they would have to be expenses outside the budget for the current budget year. They would have to have been incurred between March 15 and July 31, 2020. And they would have to be expenses such that no previous CARES funding would have already covered them. And we will be audited, and that will have to be born to be true, so to speak. This is what the accountants are telling us. So what's happened so far is the county has requested some reimbursement for expenses they've incurred. A couple of, maybe 3 of the cities have requested reimbursement. I'm assuming others of them will be by August 3 because they still have some days on that. The school districts have really just been requesting direct aid for future expenses. So at this point, and Aaron, I'd ask you to speak into this if you think I'm misinterpreting, but at this point, I think what the school districts are saying is we anticipate expenses going forward, and we would like as much of them as possible covered, and we'd like to know roughly what's going to be at our disposal so we can make some spending decisions in these coming days. Aaron, do I have that right in your mind? Please correct me if I'm missing something.
No, yes, that's correct, Rusty. You know, we're all trying to get geared up to start school here in a month. I think everybody in the county is starting the 9th, except for maybe Gossel, and they're starting the 1st or something like that. I think they went a week earlier. But yes, all of ours, a lot of it falls into the direct aid, and we're just wanting to, we need to know for budgeting purposes going forward so we can start getting this stuff ordered. Because like I said, a lot of the stuff that I'm just speaking for all of us is stuff we need to have in by the time we are supposed to be getting kids into school.
Thanks, Aaron. That's helpful. So what Aaron was just talking about will in a few minutes come back around. If you look on the 3rd item on the agenda, let's talk about some guidelines that the direct aid plan, which will be the bulk of the phase 1 funding that we are talking about. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. But here are the guidelines that we think we understand now. The accounting firm will place the programs into the worksheet for us officially. They'll do that work for us. Christine's doing, and she's using her own organizational system, and she's creating spreadsheets that when this task force says we approve that, she'll hand those over to the accounting firm, and then they will put them officially into the worksheets. General plans for transfer suffice on the front end. Here's what Scott means by that. We don't have to go down, like if we say, I'm going to use the school districts because I think they're the best example of this. If we say we're going to give a certain amount to the school districts and then each school district gets their share of money, and we just simply say the school districts are going to use this money for expenses that are coming down the pipe for them that are related to COVID-19 challenges, we don't have to bear that out. So we don't have to list out, like if Aaron had air filtration system, touchless toilets, faucets, and water fountains, and PPE of various kinds. Let's say those were the things in his plan. He's going to need to have a plan like that, but we don't have to put all that detail into what we submit to the state. We say this is the Marion School District's allotment that we've approved. State of Kansas, may we transfer this to them? Aaron will know ahead of time what that amount of money is going to be. Scott believes that'll be approved. And then Aaron can now start spending up to that amount of money. And as he spends it, and he'll have to take responsibility for spending it in keeping with COVID-related expenses, then he'll turn the receipts in probably to Janine and the accounting firm. And then as time goes throughout the rest of the first semester, they will be reconciling all of that and recording it and documenting it in a proper way so that at the end of all this, when it's audited, it's basically going to be audit ready. Scott said what he wanted to hand to us was an audit ready report. Janine, did I understand that correctly from your understanding?
Yes, and he repeated that today.
Okay, great.
So he's
that
going to
feels-
give an audit ready packet.
That feels pretty good to me. And so then continuing to work down that third item on the agenda, the accounting firm would like our proposal by August 7 if we can get it to them. He did say we'd probably have about a 2-day margin there. I'd like us to push for August 7 and see how that goes. He continues to recommend that we make no transfers of money until we get state approval for both any reimbursement plan that we submit and any funding for direct aid plan that we submit. He continues to press on that. He feels like it's too risky to fast track any transfer of funding. And so I believe that he's convinced me to submit to you all as a task force that I think that's what we should do. We should wait. That way our county is not liable for this. In some cases, it might not add up to a lot of money, but in some cases it could add up to a bunch, and we don't want to be in that situation. So if somebody wants to speak against that right now, I think now would be the time, and we can have that conversation or debate, whichever the case may be. I'm completely open to it. I'm just submitting to you all as a task force what I think the best approach is. If no one speaks up now, I'll assume that we're kind of like-minded on that. Okay, that's probably good that we have good like-mindedness on that. Okay, Scott says in the direct aid plan, what he would encourage us to do is to have 2 programs that are backups. And here's what he meant by that. Suppose the state disapproves of one of your programs in your direct aid plan. He says you need to be ready to drop something in like immediately. Because if you don't, then you'll just lose the money. They'll just move on without that particular amount of money in your plan, and the county will have to give that back to the state. So he encourages us to have some backups ready that we can just drop into our direct aid plan should one of our ideas get nixed. I keep pressing Scott, and I will continue to do so, to tell us if there's any red flags. So in a moment, when we look at this worksheet that I've sent to you all, and by the way, I've updated quite a bit, so I'll share my screen and you'll see my updated ideas. I've pushed him hard. He's seen all of that, And I've said, if you see a red flag in there, tell us now. Like, we don't want to wait and then have to scramble at the very end. Just tell us, hey, Rusty, I don't think this is going to work. So he has, and his firm has, and through webinars that Christine and Janine have been watching, they have found some red flags. And before this meeting's over, I think they'll raise what they think those might be. And then, of course, Scott reminded us to include all the fees for auditing and administration into our plan. That money needs to be there. And so we have, I think it's a $39,000 fee with the accounting firm. We're probably going to pay Christine somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $6,000. And then Janine, did you ever hear back from the auditor about what the price for the audit on this is going to be?
Yes, she said 4,500.
Okay, so there you
So it's
there you
less than we had planned.
okay, and when you see my worksheet, you're probably going to notice that I had allowed more than that, so we'll be able to reduce that audit fee, opening up some funding for some other things. Because I think in my planning sheet, I had stuck 10,000 in there to be sure that we had it covered. So that's good news. Thank you, Janine, for finding that out for us. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the agenda and I'm going to share this worksheet that I have here. And I'm going to talk us through that. And as I get started, and what you all have seen on my emails, I want to reiterate, I'm doing my best to synthesize everything that's coming through email and everything I'm hearing, but certainly I don't have it all right. So these are just, like, to me, it's probably a little, my guess is it's better than a starting point because I've been able to receive a lot of information, but by no means am I saying this is quote unquote ready to go. But what I've done is, based on everything I've heard, I've said, well, here was the Marion County allocation of phase one money, 2.389 million. Okay. Right now, I'm approximating the reimbursement request from cities and the county at 100,000. We'll talk about that in a moment. That would leave 2.289 million for our direct aid plan. Now, these numbers here are approximate. Aaron, I could use some help to know if those are accurate. I looked at the internet on a particular source. I don't know how old it is, Aaron.
Rusty, I actually
Yeah.
took a look at the school enrollments, and I have some updated numbers for you that
Okay.
came from Department of Education, but those are going to be 2019, 2020 numbers. We won't, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but we won't know what enrollment is for this year until the end of September, mid-September, I assume.
Yes, correct. September 20th is the date.
So, Aaron, thank you, Anthony. Aaron, would you recommend that we use the 1920 numbers for county school enrollments? I mean, that's probably about the best we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, that's probably going to be
I did know what alerted me to that there was a problem with the enrollment is that center school, the number of students was much higher than I thought it should be. That was probably the biggest change, but I'll send those to you. I'm not in my office right now. I was having some connectivity problems at the office, so I came home to do this. When I get back, I'll send you the updated numbers that I've got.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. And we've got a question here on the chat. Randy is asking, Randy Collette is asking, I thought the distribution of the county's allocation was to be 50% reimbursement and 50% direct aid. Has that been changed? The way I understand it, Randy, is that there really is no percentage limitation or exact percentage breakdown. The county can request reimbursement for the expenses that fit under the guidelines, and The commission then can approve part or all of those reimbursements. And at the same time, the county can request direct aid for future expenses they anticipate. And then the commission, who is going to probably accept the recommendation of this task force, can approve part or all of the county's request for direct aid. So, Randy, if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to unmute and speak up. And others, if you think I'm misinterpreting or misspeaking to Randy's question, please speak into that.
Yeah,
And I see,
I just now clarified that. I see that that was a recommendation from the Topeka Spark Group. So you're absolutely on target.
okay, thank you, Randy. Okay, so we will update this number right here. Anthony, if you could email me what you found on that, I would appreciate that. You don't have to do that now. I'm not going to take the time to update that exactly right now. But keep in mind that the rest of the numbers are based on that number for now, okay? And what would be helpful, Anthony, is the total enrollment more or less than 2267.
What I like
I believe
22, so it'd be a little bit less.
Yeah, which
that's exactly the number I remember.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Which I think will drive the allocation proposal up a little bit.
Right. And I guess, and this is just me thinking out loud, it might be good, you know, if we're using headcount or whatever, maybe we could add our employees into that as well. Does that make sense?
That might make sense, Aaron.
Because I know like we have 100 employees, well, then that would be 100 more onto our, plus our students, I guess. Because I was visiting with a couple of guys the other day and they said, well, maybe if we're doing it by that amount, maybe we are add in our employees that are in there as well, and that might.
Yeah, and then
drive that number up a little bit.
Yeah, so I hadn't even thought about that, but that seems like a reasonable request to me. Dave Crowfoot's asking, does the center have online classes they are counting? When you say center, Dave, what do you mean? Do you mean center school system?
Yes, center school system has online classes that count.
Yeah, that's a good question. Anthony, in your research, do you know how to answer that?
I'm actually going to ask Aaron with what the Department of Education reports on their website. Do they report virtual students in that?
They would be reported in the virtual section. Just for instance, the one I pulled, I think was 194.5. Because they're
For total enrollment.
Yeah, and that would not include their virtual.
Okay, that could make a difference. So
Yeah.
I'm glad Dave brought that up. I need to look at those numbers again then.
So
Okay,
thank you,
so-
Dave.
So
Real quick,
I just want to,
go ahead, Deidre.
you know, if you're going to consider virtual, are some of the other schools having like a virtual option and a non-virtual? Because then, you know, I would think if you are going to not count center's virtual students, then how can you count those students who are, you know what I'm saying, who are not going to be in the classroom with numbers?
Deidre, I'm not suggesting that we don't count virtual students. That was just something that I maybe overlooked when I was doing that. So I'll go back through, see, you know, make sure that enrollment number includes virtual students.
Okay.
Randy, did you have a comment on that? Randy Frank?
I do have a comment. And as we're talking money here, and this may not be the time, maybe later, but did you get the email I sent to you from the State Financial Council that just approved $254 million, which means an additional $74.9 million for schools? Did you get that email from me?
I did, and I'm gonna weave that into this conversation at some point too, Randy.
Oh, okay, because I think if there's this large additional money, and also as I mentioned in the last call, that when the next stimulus packet comes through, there'll be billions of dollars again for education. You know, education is important, don't get me wrong, but I think we need to look at some other options as well.
Yeah, sure. I'll weave that into the conversation and let others speak to that as well. But that's a good point, Randy. And so Anthony and Deidre and Aaron and others for that matter, it seems then that based on everything, it could turn out that the 397 for center might be more accurate than we first thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the total number of students there, that would include their virtual school, yes, that you have there. I think,
Or I mean the 533. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
because, you know, they don't have more kids than we do.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So going back to the school districts, are you also putting the private schools in there?
I assume they're not, they would fall under nonprofits.
Okay.
That might be a bad assumption, but I've been asked that question a few times now. And in my mind, they're nonprofits.
Yeah, I think the way I've understood it, private schools, private colleges, it's a little bit different. They're not under that public part of this.
So then, but we could figure their funding based on the formula that you figured the others, right?
Potentially, yes. And when we get to the nonprofits, Deidre, be ready to give your thinking on that.
Okay.
Sound good? Okay, good. Thanks, you guys. And so as I continue some of the, just keep in mind that these numbers are just a starting point. Like total business grants, would we give out 50 of them? I don't know, but just kind of keep that in mind. Total nonprofit grants, would there be 12? Would there be 20? I don't know. For now, it's a placeholder. Marion County cities populations, again, this was from the 2010 census. So I don't know whether that's what I should depend on, Anthony. Any comment on that?
Oh, that could probably cause a huge argument. I trust the 2010 census numbers more so than the estimates. I found that the estimates are usually way off, so I'm okay with using 2010 census. I think it gives us a good picture of what it is, and we know that those are accurate numbers.
Okay.
But Randy may disagree with that statement.
Well, no, actually, if you're talking to me, Randy Collett, I would think that by whatever means that they calculated the funding to come to Marion County, they used a quantity of population times $194. It seems to me that we should use those same numbers to feed back to them.
Yeah, so how do
I'm pulling out that form.
And I can tell you, as far as like public health funding, they take a 2010 population base and then they estimate, which usually is less than what the 2010 was. And that's how they decide how much funding public health gets with their state formula grant.
So Roger's telling us that the Secretary of State projections were used there, Deidre. Let's assume for a moment that's accurate, and then let's make another assumption about that. And keep in mind, it's an assumption that Marion County had 12,500 people that we received $194 per person for. I thought about all that, but I don't know how to handle that because that means a lot of people are living outside city limits, right? Because the cities have in the 2010 census just north of 8,000 people. So how do we, in our city allocations of this SPARK funding, how do we think about those 4,000 rural residents that live outside of city limits? I don't have an answer for that.
Well, wouldn't the county be included in this direct aid?
Yes.
Maybe they should be considered like the cities. They should receive that same amount per population that doesn't live in the cities potentially. I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure.
The state used 11,884 as Marion County's population.
Thank you, Janine. I knew I was in the ballpark.
I had to hunt.
Yeah, I'm glad you found it. As we get through these other possible direct aid programs, some of this may crystallize. So let's keep moving. So if the school districts were to receive 38% of the remaining allocation, that's the number titled Available Direct Aid Plan at this point. None of these numbers are solid yet. Then the total allocation would be that 870,000. The amount per student would be 383.84. This doesn't include employees at this point. That can easily be altered, and it doesn't necessarily have the enrollments accurate yet. So we'll keep working on that. But I'm pretty sure we're in the ballpark. And then with this approach, then the school districts would receive approximately 1.4 million of the aid, and it would break down like this based on these enrollments. Those are the amounts that they would receive. So whenever we get to a place where we say, hey, here's what we're going to do for the schools, Aaron, the reason I think this is important is because for you folks, if this was exactly the way we decided, and it doesn't sound like it will be, but you would know that what's going to be turned into the state is that Marion would have a $191,000 allocation, and now you can make budget decisions based off of that. Now, keeping in mind that, and then I'll let you speak to that, Aaron, keeping in mind that what Randy said is true, there are lots of signs that schools are going to be given even more funding to help. So I can't speak to how much that would be right now, but it does look promising that there would be some more coming. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and that'd be great for our budgeting purposes, so we would know kind of where we're at and get that enrollment figure plus maybe our staff, and then that way we would know what number we're working with. If it helps people at all, the CARES funds that came down in March that we received, like our district received, I think right around 60,000. And I think we received the most in the county. So that kind of gives you the amount of money, because I know they said this next one was actually going to be less than that. So that kind of gives you an idea of what those funds were. You know, I was on a meeting before I got on this one, and they haven't got a breakdown of how that's going to come to schools or what proportion or what percentage that would be. But if we could come up with a percentage like this would greatly help our planning as far as what we could start getting around to get ordered, so that we know that we've been approved for this amount of money, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, Aaron. And Aaron, sounds like you're keeping your ear to the ground on other funding that may be coming. And so as you learn more about that, especially in these next days, if you know more, please share that with us, because that could help us think through this a little bit more.
I'd gladly.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so then if I understand right, Randy Frank, the command center total proposal was 96,548.20. Does that sound right, Randy?
Yeah, I was 97 somewhere in that area. Yes.
Okay.
I can look it up for you real quick here.
That was what you had submitted to us, that number.
That's correct.
Okay, great. So that was, I think we don't need to, I don't think, unless somebody asks us to, then we're glad to, but that's a mobile command center that can be used as a lab in all sorts of situations, not only for the current pandemic needs we might have, but going forward then, we may hold on to it and continue to use it for other county needs, or if the county decided to, they could sell it. When I asked Scott Lloyd, would this qualify as a separate program for allocation of money, he said absolutely. He interpreted that as what would be a good project. So I have that on there as a possible project. Randy Frank, do you want to say more about that at this time, or Anthony?
just real quick, and this is geared towards Randy, just something that came up that I kind of found out about. Randy, I'm under the impression that the county already owns a command trailer, that the sheriff's department has one.
Let me educate you on that. They do have a trailer, but that is an alternate PSAP. PSAP is another term for dispatch. It's not a command trailer, but it's an alternate dispatch in case theirs goes down.
Does that
Thanks,
clarify
Randy.
anything?
Thanks, Randy.
Does that help you out?
And yeah, yep, that's what I needed to know.
Okay.
I'd have a question while we're on the topic. Randy, do you have any projections as to how often you're going to use this trailer?
Well, again, it depends on the virus. For the virus, it depends on that, because we do the testing. You'll also use it for testing. We assist public health when they do the flu testing or flu shots. We'll help them out with that. We'll use it for disaster responses, law enforcement responses, for example, search and rescue or lost folks. And then we'll also use it for public education. We'll take it into the communities and teach people about preparedness and how to prepare to get ready for things. So there'll be a lot of resources. I can't give you a number how many times we'll use it, but there's a plan to use it conservatively.
Okay, and where will that thing be stored, and who's gonna budget the ongoing maintenance of that thing from an equipment standpoint inside the trailer?
Who am I speaking with? You caught me.
This is Randy Collett.
Okay, sir. Yeah, it'll be stored in our storage shed that we have over in Hillsboro, and the maintenance will come through my budget.
Thanks, Randy, for those questions. Dave had asked, would the commission have to approve a big purchase like that? And the truth is, Dave, the commission would have to approve all of this. So the task force charge is to come up with a overall direct aid plan, have the accounting firm assess, does it fit within the parameters? And if they say yes, then send it on to the commission, and then it's their authority whether to approve it, parts or all of it. Thanks for that question, Dave. Okay, so moving down, the next one on here is what we've been talking about, a COVID testing lab and isolation retrofitting. That's a Tabor College initiative, but being made available to the entire county. We started using it today. It's been successful. No positive COVID tests yet, but we've tested probably 50 people today. Most of those were Tabor employees, but some of them were community members. We've had multiple community members call us for a test. I'm in the process of trying to work out with the Hillsboro Hospital, them extending their lab into our lab and overseeing that for the good of the county at large, and then we'll oversee employees and students at Tabor. We're in partnership with Mennonite Disaster Service, retrofitting the former Hillsboro Hospital. There are 18 rooms in there. So if any of our students become infected with the virus, that's where they'll do their isolation. That's costing some money, but praise the Lord for Mennonite Disaster Service. They're volunteering the labor. That's been incredibly helpful. So Deidre's asking, would that be available for testing uninsured and those who don't have a medical home? I don't know what the medical home means, Deidre. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, if they don't have a provider, healthcare provider, because the hospitals, the way it works right now, they have to have, the test has to be ordered by a medical provider for one of the two hospitals or clinics to perform that.
So is that I'll just say it this way, Tabor College is open to helping the county in any way we can.
Okay,
So
I mean, we would definitely have to put in a plan and procedures to follow, but it would be nice if we could, use that. And so that money, that expense that is in there, would that cover testing
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
now,
So let me, thank you for asking that, Deidre. Let me clarify a little bit. The answer is yes, but that covers 1,500 tests, and we anticipate on our campus having to use 1,000 of those. So could it be a little more than that? Maybe, but that covers 1,500. So that would be 500, what, I don't know what to call them. Is open use tests a good way to word that?
okay. I think that you should maybe increase that a bit, because if you should have if you have several waves that go through the college, then I think you potentially might use that 500 up. And I would like to see the community be able to, like, if we have a facility, or even if there is a business that has it within their business and they want to test their employees, would
Right.
that,
So
I'm
how
just,
many more tests do you think we should? We've purchased 1,500, and our supplier is treating us as a priority customer. So how many more tests would you recommend we purchase?
it's hard to say, because we could definitely refer people to you guys.
Now, to be clear,
What
we're
do
going to
you,
need some help with the actual collecting and testing. While we have the expertise to do it on our campus and they've all been trained, they're not going to have the time in their schedules to do a ton of that. So who would help us with that? I've reached out to Mark and he's trying to work something out, but I don't have an answer from him yet. Do you have ideas on that, Deidre?
well, I did write for another grant. I don't know if we'll get it, for expanding testing, where I would hire a person to work like Monday through Friday, and they could possibly do that through and have their salary through this grant. Now, I won't know till about mid-August if I'll get it, but if I don't, I would, and that would have to be approved then, of course, by the commission. But I think that would be a very appropriate use. If we would hire someone, we could slide it in and they could do that testing for, if we would hire that person. And then, so would that go under that monies, or should that come under another designation?
Well, either way, I think if you're asking for would more tests fit here or would it maybe fit here in row 13? I think either way. When I talked to
Yeah.
Scott about this, he said that this idea fits about as good as anything for the general county needs of what the state has in mind.
Okay.
I would just a quick suggestion as part of this funding, Deidre. I think it would be wise for under the county and part of that county health needs, you purchase what you might need in tests that then you can use at the testing lab that Tabor is setting up. It kind of that way, because those tests would be used by the wider community, and those tests would be owned by the county. To me, maybe it kind of cleans it up a little bit.
I agree
Okay.
with that, Anthony, but both of you guys, well, everyone, there is a hitch with that. You can't, Deidre will not be able to go buy these tests. She'll have a 60 to 90 day wait to get them.
Right.
And I can get them next week.
So I'm curious, if the county received the money for the test, could they just then reimburse Tabor for the
Yes.
purchase? Tabor
Yes.
purchased them on behalf of the county.
Right. I had that same exact thought. So Deidre, in our county,
Rusty.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Randy, go ahead.
It's a good thought he brought up. But if that's so, if these are in two separate projects, can you move money from one project to another? And that's why Deidre's making that suggestion to keep the money in your project, because yours specifically takes care of that issue. Because once the project's approved, they got to be spent on project items. And in order to have you buy them under the agreement you have with the company, the federal people might get a little crazy about it.
So you're saying put the money under that COVID testing and lab?
The additional money, because that way it's all in one spot, and use it for that. You may earmark X amount of dollars for stuff for Deidre.
Or X amount of tests, yeah.
Or X amount of tests, but that way it's all coming out of the same project fund line, as opposed to taking it out of a separate one. It's an accounting thing, I know that, but they get a little crazy when you move money from one to another without asking permission.
And Anthony, and Randy and Anthony, you might know, but like some of the bigger businesses, who might have assembly line or such where they work close together, would you anticipate ever having to test a large number within
Yes.
any business?
Absolutely. That from the business perspective, that's why I'm pretty supportive of this, because we could easily have an outbreak in a local business, and we need 100 people tested.
So how many would you think? I mean, just estimate that Rusty should order.
Well, our two bigger private employers, two of the biggest ones here in town, each have anywhere from 50 to 75 employees, depending on the day. And likely, if one gets it, it would be very easy for it to transfer to the other business. So you could easily be looking at 150 to 200 people that need to be tested in one outbreak.
Okay,
and that just covers probably the employees, not employees' family or other people they may come in contact with.
So do you think if Rusty would order maybe 500 more, that would at least get us a start? Because here's what I'm concerned with, just knowing how things happened in the past. Once people start using these types of lab equipment, and more people get these, then I'm not so sure that the cassettes or the testing materials will be super readily available.
So what you're saying, Deidre, is we better get those tests while the getting is good.
Yeah, unless they have an expiration date. You
They
might.
do not.
Okay.
I've already checked.
Okay.
I've already checked. We have them stored in an approved location on campus, the ones that we have so far. And I asked right away about an expiration date, and there's no concern there.
Okay, and you would have room to store those?
Yes, yes.
So what are you thinking, Anthony? Or Randy, call it?
Yeah, I would think for all of us in Marion, probably, I'm thinking of our employers, I would say probably 100 to 125 here in Marion.
If you're just picking Hillsborough, say 200 people, employees, then you times that by 2 in case they're married. So that goes to 400 tests. And if they each have 2 children at home, it just keeps going up. So
But typically we don't test. I mean, we would do the testing in, for the employee themselves. You know what I'm saying? For that business, just the employee.
okay.
And then the other testing usually gets done through other means. And because we usually don't test say an employee gets tested, then their family, we don't usually test their family. If the employee is positive, we'll put them in quarantine, and if they have symptoms, we'll test. So
And
that's
those
how that works.
And those tests, Deidre, are not necessarily, that's a different kind of test and a different set of circumstances. So the testing we're talking about, just in case not everybody has been hearing over the last week or so what we're talking about knowing within an hour the results of the test. It's point of care testing. It's 100% accurate on positive COVID tests. It's 97% accurate on negative COVID tests. So it's a great tool for the county. But when we would use it is when we have a need to know quickly.
Right.
And often, and often that need to know isn't point of care. And then we would handle those tests through a separate process, PCR testing that goes to a lab in Topeka or wherever else the hospitals have partnered with. Am I right about that, Deidre?
Yes.
Does that make sense, Christine?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so right now I'm hearing 500, and just so you know, that's roughly, the cost of that's roughly $20,000.
Just real quick, Deidre, how many tests have you performed here in Marion County so far? Do you have an estimate?
You mean like all of the providers and everyone? According to KDHE, I think we're in the upper 500s. However, that's not near, like I get reports probably on 7 a day that are pending or negative, and then that's only what we know about. We don't know when they're sent off. And I asked Brenda at the St. Luke lab the other day, and she said she would have to, it would take some time to figure it. So that's kind of, it's, that's a hard number to say. But what I'm thinking is when you have an outbreak, like Rusty said, you want to test them quick. So if we find someone positive in one of your businesses would very likely want to test everybody and find out so they know who can stay at work and who can't. Because the quarantine would be the immediate people so not your whole business would have to be quarantined. You know what I'm saying? Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to get a good grasp on, what the community might need in terms of testing. Because it's very likely, we may end up with outbreaks in different areas. Marion has an outbreak, and then a couple weeks later, Hillsborough has an outbreak. And so we've just exhausted all the tests that we've got.
Let's move on. And I think I've got enough information there that I'll run some numbers past a few different people, and it'll probably be a proposed additional 500 or more tests that we purchase. And I'm going to check with our supplier about what he anticipates in terms of how quickly we need to order those, to your point, Deidre.
Okay.
So business grants, this 8% may or may not be the right number. My question on this, and boy, Anthony, or others for that matter, but Anthony, you might seem like the logical one. I'd love for you to come up with a formula for how business would apply for these grants, and what the maximum grant would be and that sort of thing. At 8% of the allocation, they'd have about $180,000 available to the businesses in Marion County. I think we would define just about every business in our county as small business. If we use the CARES Act definition, every business in our county is a small business. Whether they're for-profit businesses or non-for-profit businesses, they're all small businesses according to the way the original CARES Act defined small business. I think 500 or less employees. Anthony, would you be open to working out a relatively simple approach to how businesses could apply for grants with whatever allocation amount we offer them?
Yeah, I can probably work with Randy Collett and come up with something. I'll need to spend a little time looking at what that eligibility, the expenses that can be paid through that kind
Sure.
of thing. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Christine, could you email Anthony the eligibility guidelines for what businesses can use money for in this funding?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Thank you, Christine.
And frankly, we may want to use a very similar approach to how we deal with nonprofits. Randy and I both work. Randy and I both work, at least I do, and I'm sure Randy does. We work with nonprofits all the time. And I think a very similar approach could be handled with them too.
That's a good call, Anthony. Would love for you to kind of work on those two things together. PPE storage facilities. I'll let Randy Frank speak more about this if he'd like, but the way I understand it, we've got a combination of needing to build a small storage facility and then probably rent some storage space for stockpiles for both the county and the sheriff's office. Randy, did I get that close to right? And would you like to say more about that?
You are close to right. Two things. There would be one of them is a small building shed. It's a little metal shed that'll wind up behind the sheriff's office, which will hold PPE for the law enforcement folks. And also, when we say PPE, there's a lot of terminology for PPE, and law enforcement deals in a lot of different hazardous, different situations, hazardous material, meth lab, so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on, much like our firefighters do. So, when we looked at the PPE, there was no clear definition of, are we just talking about medical grade PPE or what it was? So that's why this project was proposed. So it'll hold all that type of materials and equipment for the law enforcement group to work with. The other one that you mentioned, looking at the, I was trying to look at it again. The last one I have pulled up here, there's $95.5 thousand recommended to purchase PPE with. That's a lot of PPE if we're talking about masks and gloves and so on and so forth. And I don't think anyone's facility is big enough to just throw it all into there and say, okay, here's your share of it, hang on to it. I'm thinking we may have to look at probably renting a building or leasing a building, whichever term we want to use, to hold that materials until we can receive it all and then just distribute it all. Like most warehousing situations, which is this one will be, for example, the schools, they probably don't have the room to dump huge amounts of PPE in their backyard and saying, okay, find a place to keep this if and whenever you need it. So I think we're going to have to find somewhere to do that with. I am looking
Randy. Oh,
yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I did some thinking the last couple of days. I think that the city of Hillsborough has facilities to handle a lot of storage of that PPE. Up at the old hospital, Tabor College is going to be using part of the building, but they will not be using the basement, and they'll not be using the operating room side of the building. We would be more than happy to let the county use those spaces to store PPE free of charge.
We'll have to ensure that the facility that you're talking about is secured, and would rather not do it in the basement, because I don't think any of us are young enough to be running up and down the basement hauling these boxes up and down the basement stairs. At least I know I'm not. So the main level floor, because you do have a dock to back into and you put it on, that would be the best. We can definitely look at that. If that's an option and it works out, then that's great. Then at least the building is not necessary.
Randy, could you go ahead, Anthony? I'm sorry.
We're going to be doing quite a bit of work in the old hospital. The operating room wing of the hospital will be completely locked off from Tabor's use of the rest of the building. So we're going to seal that up. So it will be secure in that aspect.
Thanks, Anthony. Randy, I'll assume you'll look into that in some more detail. It sounds like a good option.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. Hey, there's a question that Deidre had, is the business grant where the long-term care facilities would fall under. You know, Deidre, I'm really glad you asked that because my guess is my thought on that was incorrect. I was thinking they would fall under nonprofit. Can somebody help me? Are our long-term care facilities for-profit or not-for-profit businesses?
They're both. Most of them
Okay.
here in Marion County are non-for-profit, but Deidre, you may correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe one of them in Peabody is for-profit.
So Deidre, does that help the bulk of what the long-term health care needs for long-term care facilities would come under this non-for-profit grants? That's one of the bigger reasons that that number was fairly large, is because I anticipated they would need some help. Deidre may have stepped away. Oh,
No,
no,
I'm
she's out.
here.
Oh, I'm
That
sorry.
answers.
Okay, thank you. I should have checked the chat. Sorry about that, Deidre. So then personal protective stockpile, I have a really hard time knowing what number to plug in here. Is there anybody that has more expertise than I to know if $90,000 seems about right for what our county is going to need to stockpile and have available for different organizations across the county to use when they need it?
Rusty?
Yes.
We just finished doing a calculation on that of all the PPE that was handed out in the last 4 months to all the facilities, to schools, to businesses, emergency services, and everything else. We took a list of everything that was received through the national stockpile or what we purchased between all that, and some of it was actually donated. We took all that, figured out what the actual cost was, and that's over $70,000 that would have been spent had we wrote the check for it in the last 4 months.
Thank you, Randy. So would that suggest that this $90,000 figure is at least in the ballpark of what we might need?
I think you're there.
Okay. I guess.
And the thing to remember too is that here, and Aaron will know this too because he's looking at different products. Here within the next few weeks or the next month, our potential vendors will become overwhelmed, and sometimes prices go up when things like that happen. So we will spend more money, unfortunately.
And Randy, are you in charge of creating this stockpile?
Yes, for the disaster, we're taking care of that as part of the Stafford Act. I know that's terminology no one needs to know, but during a disaster, emergency management does fall into the logistics of taking care of that. And we've created a series of products electronically to track everything that comes and goes and where it all sits. And so we've already got that in place, and it's definitely something we can make to move to manage the additional stockpile that we're looking at doing. We can definitely make that happen.
Thanks for your work on that. So we're in the ballpark there, it seems. Nonprofit grants. Anthony or Randy, would one of you just off the top of your head give us a quick rundown of the general nonprofits in our county that you're aware of?
Randy, you want to start up on that?
No, because my mind isn't working quite that quick yet.
I can get us going. So we've got the college, we've got private, schools for kids, we've got long-term care facilities, we've got, I believe, a Prairie View, at least one Prairie View site here. That gets us started.
We've got Main Street Ministries.
Main Street.
BAT,
Would churches fall in this category? I assume they would.
yeah, I would say churches do too.
We have the Ministerial Alliance over here, which is the same thing as Anthony's Main Street, a little different, but. And then, there's obviously the St. Luke's Hospital. Aaron, you're right on target with circles. There's the parents as teachers in the county-wide organization, I believe. Families, Aaron, help me with that acronym.
Families and communities together.
Thank you.
Okay, so that just as we got started there, food bank, somebody said yes. So we've got a lot of nonprofits in our county that are doing great work. And so as you're thinking, Randy Collett and Anthony, about, you know, setting up a process for whether it's a for-profit or non-for-profit to apply for a grant, I just wanted to have a little context in our heads there. You mentioned, Anthony, you thought they'd be similar. I could see that, but I could also see there being maybe a few distinctions between the two. I don't know. But as you guys think about that, I'm sure you'll figure that out.
Yep.
And then, so county health needs. Deidre, can you speak to this? I didn't, here's another one that I'm probably flying a little blind on. I put a number in, but the truth is I really don't know how to think about this, Deidre. Can you help us think about what some of the county health needs are? Is that an appropriate number? Is it too big? Is it too small in your judgment?
Are you considering, I'm assuming that the hospitals will either go under business or nonprofit, right?
You tell me.
Well, if you put the hospitals under business and nonprofit, then I think that county health needs, now Randy, Frank, don't fall over, but I think that's a little bit high for us. However, and Randy, Frank can address this. If we have enough money, I would like to get a couple maybe fit testing equipment for the N95 masks so that we can, so the fire districts and the law enforcement, so that people around the county could be fit tested. So if we do that, that may not be too terribly high, but I do plan to use, we hired 2 RNs, one predominantly on the weekends and one during the week. So I'm planning to take their salaries out of that. If we don't get the expanded testing grant, then I plan to take a person, like I mentioned before, out of that and pay wages out of that.
But when you say a little too high, Deidre, are you say, when I hear that 10 to 20,000 too high is what registers in my mind?
If there's, the other thing I didn't see on the list is also EMS. So if we lump EMS in there, then that's probably a good figure.
Okay, well, I was thinking that that's where EMS would come under. Either that or the cities. And I was going to ask you, which one would it come under? Would EMS come under the county health needs, or would it come under the city needs?
You know, when we put together the work group to begin with, it fell under the health, and it falls under the county, because the county takes care of all those responses, not just for the county. We take care of the city responses as well. So the county would be the one who would bear the brunt on that. But I think Deidre, you're right on track, because if we do the fit testing machines, and I think that's a great idea, and we'll train someone to help do the testing. The N95 mask and any of the N95, and there's so many models of them. Those are medical masks that are required to actually be fit tested to your face, and you do it annually. And for example, mine was 1160 last year, but this year it changed because I probably lost a little bit of weight. My face is a little bit skinnier, so my mask had to get a different mask. That happens. So for our law enforcement, our fire, and our EMS, and mostly law enforcement EMS, and some fire who respond to lift assists and things like that. Wearing a fit tested mask protects them better than the KN95. You've heard of the N95, but the KN95 is a Korean knockoff, and it does good for what it does, but it doesn't give them that up close protection. So I believe if it's a good plan, Deidre, to see if we can procure one of those machines. They are a little pricey. I don't remember the price. We looked at it 4 months ago, but we have a lot of first responders that need to be tested and wearing the correct mask as they respond instead of just the first mask they find.
Thank you. So it sounds to me like the number might be in a pretty good ballpark given everything that is being assumed here, i.e. the hospitals are under business or nonprofit and the EMS services are under county health needs. Now I want to go to city needs, and I want to make mention of something here. I use 3%, not sure is that right or wrong, but what I do know is that the Marion cities submission for, let me back up. I'm going to back up. So I want to back up to reimbursements. The cities and the county have asked for reimbursement. They haven't all yet. I'm assuming by August 3rd they all will. But Marion City asked for reimbursement of roughly $55,000 in lost utility revenue. I asked Scott Lloyd about that, and he says that in a nutshell, that will not be approved by the state. Janine, can you speak to that? That's the email I got from Scott Lloyd today.
Yes, if you look at the federal guidelines, I think the bottom of page 5 specifically cites that. Counties and cities cannot recoup lost revenue. Now, they
Okay.
did say that possibly a grant for that would be a possibility. So, Randy, you want to look? I've got a copy of that. I'll send it to you.
Okay. So I'm gonna, here's the reason I bring that up. I'm gonna take that right now as the accurate interpretation, because now both Janine, our treasurer, and our accounting firm have both told me the same thing, that will not be approved. And so you can subtract $55,000 from that number in cell E1 on your screen, which is going to make it 45,000. And then that's going to drive, the allocation available here up. And you can see right now we still have 102,000 remaining. So city needs for future planning, I haven't received any requests for those at this point. I have received some for reimbursement. Do you agree with me on that, Christine, or have I missed something?
Can I speak for just a moment?
Sure, Janine, please.
Okay, listening to Swindle, Jansen, Hawk, and Lloyd this morning, that the reimbursement form can only be for funds the county has already spent. Since we have not paid the cities or the schools any money, all their needs will then go into the direct plan. We have to show a transfer out to the city in order for it to be considered in the reimbursement.
Correct. But what I'm saying is that a couple of cities have requested reimbursement. They haven't all requested reimbursement. And so I'm anticipating that what the city's requested reimbursement is going to be relatively small. And so then in the direct aid, like you're saying, Janine, right here.
I'd like to remind everyone, we have not made that due until August 3rd.
Correct.
Us. I know
Correct.
that we've got a good amount of money from the city of Hillsborough. They're still compiling that information.
Okay.
I don't know what the number was. At one point it was 35,000. I'm not sure where we're at now.
Okay.
So,
And thank you, Anthony.
while we're on that topic, I want to make a little clarification. The city of Marion's request was not for lost revenues. It was for creating a utility relief fund, which I believe does qualify. Now, somebody smarter than me with these regs can look at it, but again, it is not for getting reimbursed for lost revenues. It's for creating a utility relief fund for people who have utility needs that have not been able to meet them because of unemployment or for whatever reason.
Thank you, Randy.
That's a very important clarification.
Thank you, Randy. And I'll clarify that with Scott and get an opinion about that. And this number in cell E1 will continue to vary some based on what Randy just said and Anthony, what you said, and that's fine. We'll know that soon enough, right? We'll be able to put an accurate number in there fairly soon. But so that's probably on the low end for sure. It's probably going to, listening to what you all just said, it's going to be more than 45,000. I'm going to change it back to 100,000, and we'll just, for now, we'll go with that. But okay, so now on city needs in the direct aid plan, that's what I'm trying to say. I have not received any direct aid requests from cities yet. Randy and Anthony, can you speak to that piece?
Yeah, I know you've not received anything from Marion because I haven't wrapped my head around that yet.
Gotcha. Thanks, Randy.
I have, based off my understanding of this, we weren't asking the cities at this point for any particular direct aid requests. I was under the impression we were going to just allocate a certain percentage of funding to them. I do think that the reimbursements so far kind of give you somewhat of a clue as to what that's going to look like in the future.
Okay, so to that point then, this could be off by 1% or so in terms of a percent allocation, Anthony. Assuming the 100,000 is close to right, then this could be off by 1% or so. So we'll have to keep thinking about that. And then the fire district. I'm sorry, go ahead.
One of my bigger concerns is as we went through this reimbursement, and again, it's not all due till August 3rd, but there's no doubt in my mind that Hillsborough and Marion are going to have the bulk of that reimbursement. I have cities that have told me they haven't spent anything, so they're not going to be sending in a reimbursement. So we've got a huge discrepancy between what's being reimbursed as far as which community is being reimbursed. So I want to be fair to everybody, including those smaller communities, but I do not want to allocate money in the direct aid plan if those haven't been, if the money's not going to be used by those communities.
Yeah, that's a good point, Anthony. Thank you for adding that in there. And then the fire districts have requested a little bit, not a lot, but they anticipate a need for a little bit of help. And so now here's the
number you have in there for the fire district is not quite correct. It's about $5,600.
Oh, this number here that I've got highlighted now?
Right, yeah, $5,600, yes, sir. That's two different fire districts that have requested assistance for projects.
Okay, thanks, Randy, for clarifying that.
Yes, sir.
So I want to ask us a really key question. How somebody says we also have requests from libraries that would fit under nonprofits. That's Janine saying that. Thank you, Janine. And then Roger was on the chat, was also repeating what Randy Collett had said about the utility relief fund, which Marion created. So I'll clarify that with Scott Lloyd and get him to give an opinion on that now that I've understood that better. I appreciate you guys making that clear. So my question is, do you feel like we're in the ballpark? Is there anything on this? We're going to have another meeting to finalize. So I'm not I'm not going to try to move us to finalization right now. That seems like that would be unproductive, given that we don't even have all the information in yet. What I want to know is, do you see anything on here, especially, you know, in this column really is the one we're looking at, that you would say, man, that just seems like that's way off. I would, I need to hear if somebody would say on the task force, especially, given everything I've been hearing, Rusty, like we're going down a really wrong path on a particular area here.
I could, and I'm of course biased, but I could definitely see the potential to increase the city's needs percentage to some extent. What that looks like yet, I'm not sure, but that does seem like it could potentially be a little bit low.
And then in my mind, and if you look at this, we have margin yet because our audit fees, administrative fees are not going to add up to $90,000, really $91,000. So I had in my mind doing that as a starting point, and you can see what happens there, Anthony.
Okay.
Any other things that you'd say, man, you're going to be way off on that, Rusty?
I'm not sure on the county fees yet. I don't have them all in.
And are you talking about reimbursements or are you talking about direct aid plan when you say that, Janine?
Reimbursement, so that might change your, yes.
Right. Yeah, right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yep, no worries. It's not due to August 3rd.
Janine?
Which is coming close.
But it is due August 3rd. Remember that.
Hey, Janine, if you have county needs, does that need to be a separate like line item?
Are you talking about, Deidre, for reimbursement or for direct aid?
For direct, if she's gonna, if she foresees more.
For the county department heads, because I know there've been some people requesting stuff.
That's right. Did I send you that county ads?
I haven't seen it.
Are you asking me that, Janine? I don't think I've seen it. Christine, or
Yeah, Janine, I believe you sent that to both myself and Rusty.
sorry if I haven't seen it.
No, that's okay. There's been a lot of emails back and forth, so things are easily lost sometimes. Janine, do you want to forward that to Rusty, or do you want me to forward that?
If you've got it pulled up, do so, would you?
Sure. Take me 30 seconds.
So Deidre, if I'm understanding you right, what you're saying to Janine is, hey, if you're seeing other county needs, I'm going to need to know that because I'm going to probably need to include those under the county health needs. Or Deidre, are you saying we need to add a row here?
I think we should add a row. Just like you have city needs, I think it should say county needs.
I got you. Thank you. I appreciate you making that clear to me. Okay, thank you. Other thoughts about where we might be off just, you know, in our general direction here? Okay, I'm going to go back to the agenda. Give me a second. Okay, so that brings me to say we need another meeting to kind of, once we have our data in, to finalize our plan, our direct aid plan, so that we can submit it by August 7th. I looked at my calendar before I started this meeting, wondering what could I do, and if we needed a half day, not that it would take a half day necessarily, but if we needed that, it would work for me Tuesday afternoon, the 4th. So I'm free, and I've blocked it out from 1 to 5. And then after that, for me, because we start checking in students next week will become really difficult for me to give time for about 10 days in a row. So I guess I'm asking for the favor of the committee. Could we make August 4th, next Tuesday afternoon, work? So I'm going to open it up to hear what you all are thinking.
That would work great for me.
Tuesday would be fine if we could start at 2.
Okay, thank you.
I'm on my security meeting 4. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Don't forget to vote.
Say that again, Dave.
Don't forget to vote on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I probably need a clarification. Do we need to vote on when we meet, or what do you mean?
The state election.
Primary day.
That's
August
Primary
4th.
election day.
primary vote.
Oh. Does that hijack Tuesday, or can we make it work still?
We may not, we would have to talk to Tina. We may not be able to meet at the county courthouse, or I guess if we're going to Zoom it, I don't know. But if we need to meet in person, we can make the Hillsborough City Hall available if needed. Because I'm unsure if we'll be able to meet at the courthouse.
Yeah, Tina will not be able to do anything for you at the courthouse. So Rusty has to host it.
Yeah, I'm glad to host it on Tabor's campus or on Anthony. If you think the City Hall's big enough to host it on Tuesday, that'd be fine too. I've got a really large room that we would be able to space all of us out without any concerns.
Do we need to be there in person? Because that would be a problem for me.
I don't think we'd have to be, but I would like for the option to be there, Janine. I'd like either option. But the problem with that is, and maybe Dave, you can speak into this, or Janine, but if part of it's virtual, I can set up a Zoom. I have an account through my business, but is that a problem in terms of using a separate Zoom for an official meeting? Or can we go ahead and advertise that on the website, Lloyd, and then that be good enough and let people have the link?
We've been, go ahead, Janine.
I think we'd be okay as long as it's recorded.
Yep, I can record it and then I can make it available to put on the website. But what about people who want to join?
We'll just have to make that available to anybody that wants to join. So we'd use Tina for that, whatever that link is. We just need to make sure she's got it. So
okay,
she can.
Yep.
Right now.
Tina's using a GoToMeeting program, and Lloyd can speak to this as well, because several of us here in the county use it. The meeting's set up and it can be hosted from any computer. So that way Janine doesn't have to be the host if she's not available to be near the computer, if that room's not available. But it can be hosted from anywhere else. I could host it in my office, or you could, Rusty, in yours, using the same GoToMeeting. So what my suggestion is, if everybody in the county is already used to using this link, changing one of them midstream may not throw a few people off. So if we continue with the same link that we got, it's a usable thing.
I agree with that, Lloyd. Is that an accurate understanding? Because that's, I think, by far the better way to go.
Yeah, by a long shot, and we keep encouraging to steer away from the Zoom meetings anyway from security reasons, but HS and others. So yeah, if we keep with what we've going, yeah, the meeting can be hosted from anywhere.
Okay.
I was also going to comment, because it's election day, our security measures and stuff, things we're working on, I may be in and out on a moment's notice, but it should work for me. So.
Okay. Thank you, Lloyd.
Right now, we're hosting the meeting on my computer here in the office. So that's why there's background music sometimes.
Okay. And Janine, would you be able to host it again? You've already said in person won't work for you. Would you be able to host it from your computer next Tuesday, just like you are now?
Yes.
Okay, I think we have that solved then. Christine, does that work for you? Tuesday at
Yes.
2?
Tuesday at 2 works for me.
Deidre?
Yes, that works for me.
How about you, Aaron? Okay, that's great. Anthony, what do you see as the better option? The library conference room at Tabor or the city hall there?
Let's go ahead and use the library at Tabor if that works.
Okay, I'll send out directions to everybody on that for those who can come in person. And if you wouldn't mind, when I send out the email with those directions, if you wouldn't mind replying all, just saying I will attend virtual or I will attend in person, just so we know who's going to be there in person. And for those in person, we'll be sure and be very hospitable. So you want to be there in person if you can.
Does your library have this set up as well? So that for those
They
who
do.
say, oh, thank you.
Yeah, we can put it on the big screen. Yep. Thanks for asking that, Randy. Okay, this has been really productive, you guys. I'll work on revising our plan. Aaron, if you could get me some enrollment numbers that you think are accurate, that'd be great. If somebody could, I don't know who the right person, maybe Janine, would you be the right person to verify my city population numbers? I used the 2010 census. If that's good enough, then I think those numbers are accurate. I took them right off the web from the 2010 census. If we're going to use something different, Janine, I probably need some help with that. I don't know what else to use.
I'll check.
Okay, thank you. Anthony, you and Randy are willing to work on a for-profit, non-for-profit sort of business idea of how they could secure grants. And by August 3rd, Christine and I and Janine will have all the rest of the data because you all will forward it to us from the various entities, and we'll update the reimbursement requests and some various other things. And I'm going to check with Scott Lloyd about Marion's submission for reimbursement on their utility aid fund. And I'm going to reword that so that he understands I had that wrong. So anything else, any other action items that are slipping my mind right now, Christine, that you noted in the minutes?
No, not right now. I think you're
Okay.
good.
Okay, Randy, were you going to add something? Randy
No,
Frank?
Mr. Rory, I'm going to be in Hillsborough at 9:30 tomorrow seeing the police chief. If we can get together after that and go look at your building, that'll be fine.
Did you catch that, Anthony? You may have to reach out to him, Randy, because he's.
Hey, I'm sorry, what was that? I just got a call from City Hall. What was
Oh,
that?
gotcha.
That's okay, Anthony. This is Randy Frank. I'll be in Hillsborough tomorrow at 9:30 visiting with the police chief. Can we meet after that and go look at your building?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Well, listen, blessings on the rest of your afternoon and evening.
Just real quick, the question I had from City Hall on the utility billing, Rusty, you're checking with the accounting firm on that?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I caught that right.
And so I'll check with them, and I just want to make sure I'm clear. When I had first asked them the question, I asked, can a loss of revenue from utilities be recovered in the reimbursement? He said no, but then you guys corrected me to say that actually isn't a loss of revenue. It was a utility relief fund that was set up and then was distributed to people as they had need. Am I understanding that correctly, you guys?
I believe so.
From my perspective, yes, you are.
Okay, thank you both. So that is how I'm going to reword it to Scott, because I definitely misrepresented that because I misunderstood. Okay, anything else? Thank you all for your great work. It's a pleasure and a privilege serving with you for the good of our county. This is going well from my perspective, and we will see you all Tuesday, but expect a host of email communication to go back and forth. Blessings, everybody. Bye.
Okay, thanks.